Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. I'm Manny Diaz. We are joined today by the one and only District 19 Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman Arrington, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Great to be with you, Manny. God bless the big country.
Yeah, well, you are a busy guy these days. Well, let's get right into it. You're currently working on the National Defense Authorization Act. This includes plans involving Diaz Air Force Base right here in Abilene and the B-21. And I know you probably can't dive into too much about this, but what can you tell us about this thus far?
Well, we've got to make the right investment. It's not just about the top line funding for our military, but how we're resourcing them with respect to the rise of China and the threat that China presents to the United States. We also have the military supporting border security. So that's been fully funded thus far. We've got to root out the wokeness, in my view, the climate agenda, the politicization of race and sexuality that's divisive and is distracting to the mission of fighting and winning wars. And then you've got the Air Force, which is, at the heart of our interest with respect to Diaz and the big country. And I can tell you that not only have we secured the B-21 and have we protected the base in terms of any personnel changes as we transition from B-1 to the new generation of bomber. But in this bill, we have in the base text provisions against retiring any of the B-1s so that we have long-range strike capability until we have produced 100 B-21s. Now, that may change after it comes out of the Senate, but the whole purpose of that is we can't take offline our long-range strike capability until we've ramped up with this new asset, the Raider, the B-21 bomber. So we continue to work to make sure that there's the most seamless and effective transition so that the next and most capable bomber in the world is flying out of Abilene in the big country.
Well, at the end of June, you along with Ranking Member Brendan Boyle, Democrat from Pennsylvania, launched a bipartisan budget process reform effort. Better ways to address the debt limit is what immediately popped off the page. Explain what this is and how bipartisanship can be reached on such a difficult topic.
Well, Manny, every American, every business and state and local governments have to have a budget. They have to live by that budget, live within their resources, except for the federal government. So, Manny, we've been under this Budget Control Act for 50 years, and it's failing. We rarely produce a budget. We rarely live by the budget. Our appropriations processes always seem to break down. We go on to continuing resolutions, or we have end of the year omnibus spending bills. The whole point is the budget process is broken. And if the process is broken, you're not going to get an ideal or optimal outcome. And so we're going to take a bipartisan approach to this.
Do you think this is something where middle ground can be reached, certainly with your Democrat colleagues?
Yeah, I've been working with my Democrat colleagues for a couple of years on this, and there is absolutely common ground. I mean, one example is we've had bipartisan legislation over the years where we would say if we don't finish the budget process and if we don't actually provide a budget and pass a budget, we can't go home to our districts and go on recess. And so it's no budget, no recess. And that's just one measure of many to make sure that we finish our job and that we draft and pass the budget. But there are a number of things that we can do that we've already identified. And I'm looking forward to this initiative and working with my colleague.
Alrighty, we're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, more with District 19 Congressman Jodey Arrington on the student debt the student debt crisis in America, along with a major issue that's plaguing American cities and the world. That and more coming up right here on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Welcome back to Big Country Politics. This is our Sunday conversation. I'm Manny Diaz. We are joined this week by District 19 Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, we were talking about the Defense Authorization Act, along with reaching bipartisanship with the debt limit there. Speaking of debt, let's kind of keep this theme going here. Just a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court struck down the student loan forgiveness plan. It's been reported that the administration is seeking to use the Higher Education Act of 1965 in hopes of student loan forgiveness. Long story short, it could possibly allow the Secretary of Education to enforce, pay, compromise, waive, or release debt. Tell me, what is the reality of student debt forgiveness in America?
Well, if you take out a loan, you should pay it back. And if you get a college degree with the support of a loan, you will probably make over $1 million more over your career. That's what most studies suggest. And the average loan amount for students is about $20,000. So it's a great return on investment to go to college, even if you have to get some financial assistance. The president decided he was just going to forgive every student's loan in the country, which would cost taxpayers $500 billion. And we're already $31 trillion and counting in debt, and in a terrible debt situation. It's wrong on a lot of levels. First of all, it was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court got it right. The majority of families paying for the upper middle and upper income folks who go to college are the lower income working families. So it's a regressive tax on working people. And it's also just supercharges this entitlement culture that we have in our country that is weakening the fabric of America. The federal government needs to get out of most of the education business. They certainly need to get out of the banking business. And we don't need a president to just, with the stroke of a pen, move a $500 billion asset to a liability when we are careening towards a debt crisis cliff. So anyway, as you can tell, I have some strong opinions about the president's decision to do that, but he was overridden, and I'm glad he was.
Yeah, well, you're part of a new bill that's looking to introduce it's being introduced to ensure border states are under invasion. It seems kind of different to put it that way, but this would allow states like Texas to defend themselves as they see fit along the border. How does this add to what the state of Texas is doing with Operation Lone Star?
Well, I think Operation Lone Star and the efforts by the state of Texas and our governor and state leaders are to be commended in that they're trying to do many things that have never been done because they have to, out of necessity, because of the failure of the Biden administration, Secretary Mayorkas, and the whole lot of them for just abdicating their security role and not enforcing the immigration laws of our country. And so this responsibility falls now on the states. Look, the Constitution is clear that the federal government should do a few things and do them well. And one of them is to repel an invasion by an enemy into the interior of our country and into our sovereign states. And when the federal government fails to do it, the Constitution gives the power to sovereign states to take that upon themselves for the sake of the safety of their citizens. Look, the drug cartels are in operational control of our border. And they are facilitating the flow of narcotics into this country at a rate that has killed over 100,000 Americans last year. So this isn't about just people coming across the border by the millions. It's really about an invasion enabled by narco-terrorist drug cartels and the drugs that are killing tens of thousands of Americans. And if the federal government's not going to do their job, the sovereign states have the right to secure the border, enforce the laws, and protect their citizens. And all my resolution does is affirm that states are sovereign, that the states created the federal government, not the other way around. And when the feds fail as miserably as this president and his Secretary of Homeland Security have failed, then, as we say, by God, Texans and our Texas leadership has to fill the gap.
One last question, Congressman, and we'll wrap this up. Florida Congressman Anna Paulina Luna put out a press release earlier this week detailing how the Department of Justice deleted content on international child sex trafficking. You know, this has been a weird deal, you know, amongst mainstream media talking heads. It's been one side because of the Sound of Freedom movie that's really kind of highlighted what's going on with human trafficking, sex trafficking. Mainstream media is associated that movie with QAnon talking points. In Washington, we see how mainstream media is perceiving this. In Washington, how is this issue perceived?
Well, unfortunately, you don't have enough Democrats, and I hate to sound so partisan about it, but it seems to be pretty black and white. There isn't enough Democrats, and there isn't enough political will by President Biden to recognize that this is a human trafficking problem and a humanitarian crisis, not just a security crisis. That these poor and vulnerable people are being enticed to come to this country because of our open border policies. And I hope that this movie will create some sense of conscientiousness, at least on the part of this administration, and some urgency on the part of my Democrat colleagues to actually take border security seriously, because it's not just about border states. It's not just about the American people. It's about these poor, vulnerable people from Central and South America who are being horribly abused by drug cartels.
Well, Congressman Arrington, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Manny. God bless West Texas.
Well, for District 19 Congressman Jodey Arrington, I'm Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next week.